I am Jim Collison, live from Omaha, Nebraska, in the Gallup offices in India. This is Gallup's Call to Coach, recorded on April 19th, 2016. Call to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you do have questions during this live webcast, we do have a live chat room that's available for you right below the main video window there. So if you're on our live page at coaching.gallup.com/live, there's a chat room. The login button, bottom left-hand corner, click it, put your name in where it says guest, and then click login. No need to create an account. And then you can get your questions into us live during the program. If you're listening to the recorded version or have questions about custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, contact us using our email address, coaching@gallup.com, or you can use the contact form that's right there on the live page. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center. That's just gallupstrengthscenter.com. For all your coaching resources and StrengthsFinder training needs, you can also catch the video, both streaming and now downloadable audio for offline listening. Actually, Google just made that easier for us today. If you have an Android phone, we are now in the Google Play Store, and so you can, through the new Google Music app, you can find us in there. And if you'd like to, if you have questions about that, let us know. But you can also catch all of this, including the apps that are available to get your top 5 on your fingertips right there on your phone. It's all on the coach's blog, coaching.gallup.com. Pooja Luthra is our host today. She works as an advanced consultant with Gallup in Delhi. And Pooja, it's great to see you because it means it's a Monday night for me, Tuesday for you. Welcome to another Call to Coach.
Thank you, Jim. Very, very warm welcome, everyone, to the Indian edition of Gallup Call to Coach. Our guest for today is a lady called Sindhu, and she's an HR professional with over 16 years of experience in OD, learning and development, and HR consulting. As of now, she leads the talent acquisition and development function in a company called JDA Software in India. Prior to this, Sindhu was heading L&D for Facebook in India. She is now also a full-fledged Gallup certified strengths coach and is leveraging her training as a coach in her organization that I believe is in the process of undertaking a large-scale strengths journey at this point. Couple of things also, I think, and Sindhu, we'll talk about it, is your experience with the leaders in your organization, and how was it like to roll out the strengths journey for them in addition to your own team. So sure. We'll get to that. Something that was just caught my attention when I was talking to Debanjan about it. But a very, very warm welcome. It's so nice to see you. I'm sorry technology has not been our friend this morning, but it's nice to have you here. Let's get started on this conversation. Just a little bit about your top 5 before we start.
Sure. Thank you so much. And this is a great opportunity for me to share my own strengths journey. And it's strength. I've been extremely passionate about reading, learning about strengths, and that journey has also been about self-development as well. And my own top 5 strengths is the Woo, positivity, activator, maximizer, and learner. And what I realized over the last 10, 12 years of my own strengths journey is the fact that all these things are things that I did subconsciously and took great pride in, and talked about it but never used the strengths language. But when I did the strengths coaching, I recognized the fact that how important it is to talk about this, and while you're learning about yourself, also educating people around you. And today, I can take great pride in talking about how the learner especially has worked for me in gathering as much as knowledge about strengths over the last 10, 12 years. So it's been a great learning experience for me personally.
Great, and it's very empowering, right? I mean, things that you sort of knew about yourself, and suddenly you get a structure around this. So that's probably the first step of appreciating the idea of strengths. So tell me a little bit about once the revelation and all of that, and you were able to put things in perspective. How has your journey been as a strengths coach? So one was the own thing. Then how did you transcend that and get into strengths coaching?
True. So I think my appreciation and towards strengths language and the strengths philosophy went up multifold when I joined Facebook, because Facebook has a strengths philosophy, and they use strengths from hiring to all parts of employee development. And I realized and recognized the fact that folks needed that strengths language to really thrive in their through their performance in the organization. And I saw that really come alive in Facebook. And prior to that, I was with Infosys, and the entire focus was so much about fixing your weaknesses, fixing your areas of development. And it was a huge culture shift for me from moving from that to an organization which focused so much around strengths. And I did see people being extremely open to feedback, and did talk that language, and it kind of became a part of the DNA of the organization. And of course, it was top down, and it took a few years for Facebook to get to where it is today. So for me, that was a huge learning as an organization development specialist, lead, L&D lead. And I kind of took that learning, and now I'm kind of starting that strength revolution, if I can call that, in that sense, to JDA software. So I can see people already, welcoming with open arms, the entire philosophy of strength. So it's been a great experience for me, both personally and from an organization perspective.
Excellent. I have a very curious question, and I'm sure people who are probably in organizations and leading functions like OD and L&D. Just to sort of I'm deviating from the coaching bit for just a second, but especially in an environment such as what you mentioned in Facebook, that everything was strengths driven. What is the role of an OD professional or an L&D professional in the strengths journey that people tend to undertake when they enter the organization and they go and they move along in their careers? So what is the role of OD and L&D typically in this journey?
Sure. So that's a very, very interesting question, Pooja, because, even before I joined Facebook, that was a question I asked myself and I asked the organization, because it felt like everything was so set. So why do you really need a specialist to come? And what is my area of opportunity there to really make a difference, right? So there were multiple such opportunities. And I will start with interviewing skills, right? Developing a module on interviewing skills that focuses on strength-based hiring. So how do you actually bring diversity in your team, and how do you look at various strengths within the team and the new talent that you're bringing in? How do you actually fill the gap with the strengths that you probably require for the team to be successful? So it starts from hiring. And then in the entire performance management, when we had calibration conversation, we actually focused on people's strengths and how we can align them to different roles based on their strengths, instead of asking them to go after their weaknesses. So we created job opportunities, aligning them to strengths. We actually discussed performance along the lines of strengths. We actually trained managers to provide or give feedback around strengths. So that doesn't mean that we never looked at weaknesses. We actually use the strengths language by saying that you cannot ignore your weaknesses, but you need to learn to manage them. So if they came in the way of your performance and they derailed your performance, then you need to learn to manage your weaknesses. And that could be in the form of outsourcing that, finding a complementary strengths that you can take help from your teammates, or automating some of those things. So we did use strengths language there. We also use strength language when we were, interestingly, when we were asking people to look at other opportunities, and that could even be exits, right? We did talk about strength, so people really didn't feel negative about the whole experience, and they felt extremely positive, because they were looking at how it's not about being the best, it's about being the right person for the right job. So that is where, and then very importantly, in terms of succession planning and coaching folks to take up higher roles. So that's where I played a very, very crucial role. I use the strengths lens in order to coach folks. And very other area of where you can use strengths, and we use that in Facebook also, was change management. We used folks who can actually be our change champions by looking at their strengths profile. So those were places where we actually use strengths extensively. And as an OD specialist, I played a key role in championing some of those initiatives.
Okay, and I think that's I think that's a great answer. It sort of clarifies the entire process of when an employee enters to development, to progress, and how strengths fits into this whole thing. And this is what I tell people all the time. So it's no way telling you to revamp everything that you've been doing so far. The only thing you have to do is start looking at it with the strengths lens. That's all. And philosophically it does make sense. And I'm sure going through that training of 4.5 days, it probably reiterated that it just makes sense. And there is a case for, although strengths finder may not be the tool for it, but there is a case of talent-based hiring and things like that, of course. Absolutely. So when you talk about strengths profile, etc., so was it a particular instrument that you used, or was it the strengths finder? How did that work?
So I was exposed to strengths even before I actually took up the strengths coaching. So it was interesting how my entire journey of strength started way back in Infosys, where we used the Gallup engagement. We did the Gallup engagement survey, the Q12, Correct. And that's Correct. Where the whole shift happened, where I started looking at strengths, and really that was really the differentiator of engagement when you look at highly engaged and not so engaged workforce. And from there, when I joined Facebook, it was interesting because we used Strengths Finder for folks who joined Facebook as part of their onboarding program. So they did their strengths, and we kind of gave them a sneak preview into strengths. Now, once they settled into their role, we gave them an opportunity to come and approach us whenever they want to, whenever they feel they're ready, in order to be coached by us in a more detailed manner. So that was really how we introduced it in bite size, and really didn't push our agenda of strength. So we really got them interested, and then it kind of got built over a period of time.
Interesting, very interesting. So coming back to, again, I'm taking on your trajectory of your career and trying to see how it all panned out for you. So Facebook, an organization where it was probably an evolved culture of strengths, and your new organization JDA, where you're probably starting off on a strengths journey. So what do you think it takes for an organization to develop that sort of an ecosystem where strengths is considered as something that will add value more than, a lot of times misconception is it's a nice, fluffy, soft sort of a thing, but we all know there's a business case for focusing on strengths. So how is it that you are able to, get into the culture of an existing organization and trying to see how strengths can play a role there?
Right. I think I play kind of a dual role. I play a role being part of the leadership team. I have the access to leadership conversations. So when we are having conversations at a leadership level, I would say your language has to be strengths. So when the entire team is talking about what do we do, how do we fix things, you actually bring in the strengths language. Talk about things that the people are already good at, and how do we strengthen that further. That's one role that I play. As a head of L&D, the role that I play is to facilitate these sessions for teams. So when I get opportunities to talk about training requirements and gaps in learning, I play a crucial role in telling them, why don't we try doing a team building session with strengths. And that's what I did run last week, in fact, for our one of our business consulting group. And over a period of time, now these 20 of them, I'm sure, will go out and talk about this to 20 others, and they will get interested, and they will come and ask me to run a program for them. It's going to be, really, again, bite-sized. It's not going to be, and it's going to be in terms of starting it small and then seeing it grow. And so on one side, it's really about getting the leadership buy-in. On the other side, it's about getting the teams. So you're not leaving it just top down, you're doing both approach, top down and bottoms up. So
Yeah.
that's the method. I'm sorry, that's the method that
Yeah.
I'm following at JDA. And they do appreciate the fact that I've seen it work in an organization and I bring in that expertise. And so they're really open to experimenting. And if it works, I'm sure they will embrace it, really well.
Yeah. So those are great examples of application in terms of how are you taking it forward. So when you talk about strengths coaching, one is of course what we talk about, the one-on-one coaching in which we're talking to individuals, and then of course getting the team together to see how strengths complement each other, and the idea of a strengths-based team essentially. So which works well. So tell me a little bit more about, are you actively coaching as well, doing a one-on-one coachings as well?
Yes. So the person who led this entire effort last week was the person who got coached by me. So, so once she got coached, she understood that this can actually help her team, and she then went and talked to her team, really marketed the whole thing, and then got the team together. Now we have 20 of them waiting to be coached further, because they've only seen their top 5. They very soon they want to look at their other 29 as well. So there is opportunity there for me to influence 20 others, and the 20 will then go and influence maybe another 20 teams. So that way, I think we will soon see that strengths revolution happening at JDA as well.
Right. So tell me a before and after scenario. So for example, while you were at Facebook, the reality was that strengths was pretty much ingrained in the culture. However, you probably hadn't you hadn't gone through the certified coaching bit. Now in this organization, the strengths is not yet taken off, but you're a certified coach. So is there anything that you find yourself leaning more on, which you benefited greatly from by, in the 4.5 days that you were there, in terms of concepts, in terms of tools, anything that you find yourself leaning towards a lot now in a more structured manner maybe?
Absolutely, absolutely. So what I was leaning on prior to the coaching certification program was a lot of knowledge that I had gathered over a period of time, thanks to my learner. And my team, my manager, and the rest of the L&D team at Facebook were already certified in the strengths program. So they talked with a lot more confidence than I did. For me, it was more passion than the ability part. So it was really about there was I would say talent, but I had still not shined and seen it as transforming into strength. But when I went through the entire program, I recognized that my appreciation for this went up multifold, because now I'm going into I bring in the application, but now I'm getting really on the other side of the coin, which is the theoretical and the research and the science behind this whole thing, right? So today when I speak with a lot more conviction than what I did earlier.
So again, I think that comes with the knowledge, and of course, any tools that you find yourself using increasingly that have been useful in an organizational context?
Yeah, so the best of us is something that I find toward the end of the session, when they talk best of us. Actually, every part of the session is very, very useful, and it's an eye opener for the team, because it's always this aha moment. When they do the name it, claim it, aim it, it was like, oh my God, this is so much me. And then when they look at the domains, the 4 domains, leadership domains, the team domains, they're looking at what's missing and what is something that they're already good at. No wonder I am such a good executor, but not a thinker, and I'm a good doer, not a thinker, and stuff like that, right? So there are a lot of those moments of revelation. At the same time, when we come to best of us, it kind of gives them this feeling of, okay, now I have this option to talk about what you can come to me for. and what can I contribute during our conversations, during our project team formation, or why am I more successful in doing something than somebody else? So the 4 quadrants of best of us is something that people take away as a huge learning as a team. Individually, they take a lot more, but as a team, they think that this best of us is something that they can put up at their desks, and it's a reminder for themselves as well as for the team to look up and say, hey, now I know whom to go for when it is to do with, deliberating on something. But when when I absolutely have no time, but I need to get into action or execution, I need to go to an activator. And so conversations like this helps people appreciate each other, individual differences, and how as a team we are successful, as an individual not necessarily.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Best of Us is, I think, one of my favorites as well, and I've been leading the course for a long time now. So the activity we always get done, but I myself was in a training a couple of weeks back, and we got to do this activity. So when you sit down with it yourself and you are filling those 4 quadrants, there is so much clarity. And my manager was like, "Please make sure you share it with me. I just need to understand that about you." And it just turns out to be a refreshing conversation, which is sort of different from what you normally would have with your peers and your manager. So
Right.
I've seen that happen personally and of course in courses as well. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have another one for you, and which is something that we hear quite often. Being in OD and L&D, have you ever been put on a spot in which you've been asked, okay, what is the ROI for strengths? I mean, why are we investing all this money? Why are we doing all of this? How do you go about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being in L&D, I think this is one question that's asked time and again. And my answer to this question, I'm sure a lot of the head of CFOs may not like it.
Yeah.
But for sure, the reason why I say this is because I think a culture of an organization, you cannot measure the culture of the organization. You can only measure with the quality of life people live within the organization and the kind of work that they do. Right?
Yeah.
So we definitely have an engagement survey that happens year on year. That's a good measure to really see how engaged folks are, how happy they are, and how are they contributing to the productivity, profitability, turnover of the organization. Having said that, I would say that just go talk to somebody and look at the quality of performance conversations that you're having. Look at the quality of calibration conversation that you're having. Look at the quality of feedback people are providing during post performance cycle. I would say those are your intangibles, but have a huge role to play in the culture of the organization. And for me personally, I did not have any metrics when I actually walked into a Facebook or walked into a JDA. But the reason I joined the organization is because of the kind of conversation that I had with people. That gave away so much. I didn't have to really look up their revenue. Of course, I did, but that was not to make that decision of should I join this organization. I joined there for the people, and I found that it's really about the quality of people, and the conversation that you have with people defines the culture of the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great tip for all the other HR professionals that are looking to sort of wade their way around getting a strengths culture embedded. Jim, any questions from the chat room?
Yeah, we have a couple actually. So Shruti had asked, maybe share some specific examples of how strengths was used in creating change champions or in the change management process. So you're thinking about applying strengths to change management. Any other examples where that's worked really well for you?
Sure. Is that Shruti who's asking that question? Okay. Hey, Shruti, great question. I think change management, for while we understand the definition of change in itself is inevitable, right? What's challenging is personal transitions, how people accept and move on, letting go of your past and move on with your future. And I think you do need people who are, certain types of strengths who really, for me personally, I have seen who really help you get people together. So one is, I think, folks like, people who have deliberative as their strength, as the top 5 strengths, help you look at, while you are actually forming the team, can help you look at what are the different things that can go right or wrong, right? So you definitely need someone to deliberate and tell you some of those things. You need folks with context to help you. How has this, something like this, helped you in the past? And how can that help you in the future, right? So, and then we need folks who with activator who can help you execute some of these things. So what we have seen is that we definitely need people with different combinations to work. So we need people who are looking at future. We are looking at people who are in the present, which is adaptability, and the context. So we really need a combination of all three for us to understand how has this worked in the past, what is the future of this change, and how do we deal with that in the present. So really futuristic, adaptability, context, for example, can work together in order to take the 360-degree perspective of the past, present, and the future. So that's just one example of how you can look at strengths, but you definitely need different types of strengths to come together on different aspects of change. So in this particular case that we kind of identified people with a combination of context, adaptability, and futuristic, because we needed all three, because it had a bearing on the present, it had a lot of context of somebody to bring in, and it had an impact on the future. So we needed all three, and all three of them also had activator and deliberative. So we had a combination of these three, these 5 in each of these people to really call them change champions, and how they can actually lead change in the organization.
How often, when you were at Facebook, how often do you think you talked about people's themes, and combinations? Was that a daily conversation? Was that something that went on weekly? How did that embed itself into the culture?
So it wasn't like a daily conversations, but managers were enabled with the strengths language. So when they did their one-on-ones, when the conversation was with regard to what do I do next, how do I form, put together my goals for the next 6 months, what my career conversation, that's when they actually reflected on the strengths, and they said, hey, let's pause and reflect, look at your strengths, and then let's see what are things that you're doing today, are they really aligned to your strengths, and what are the gaps today, and do you want to focus on some of the strengths more consciously, and stuff like that. And a lot of times manager used us as L&D and OD experts even prior to the conversation. The conversation was a very, very serious one, where it was almost like a make or break kind of a thing. We kind of did a mock. We provided them with enough information for them to be equipped before their conversation. So we did that. In some cases, we actually sat with them. We did a, we kind of coordinated, and it was a co-owned kind of conversation that we did. So we partnered with them to do that. So it was not something that we spoke like every morning, every afternoon, or every evening, but definitely it was something that was there back of people's minds. So anybody you go talk about strengths, everyone knew what we were talking about. So it was not a forgotten thing. It was something which was always playing, but maybe at a subconscious level.
Yeah, no, it's great to have kind of a third party to step into, right, and be able to, for those managers to be able to ask some questions, bounce some things off of. So I think that's excellent. JB had asked a question around biggest surprise. So as you've moved through your career with this, have you been exposed to it? What's maybe the biggest surprise that you've had around working with people's themes and working in the StrengthsFinder movement?
Yeah, biggest surprise.
And particularly in the workplace is what he's interested. Particularly.
Yeah. So I don't think I've had a surprise, but I've had people having those oh my god and aha moments. So I can probably share that, where somebody came back and said, "Hey, is this something that you knew and you wrote for me? The entire report. It is like every word of this report is like almost." It looks like somebody knows me so well and they've written it. So that was a moment of, oh my God, it's like very few people come back to you and say this is 100% me, right? So when he was doing the name it, claim it, aim it, in the name it, he almost underlined the entire 3 pages, which was like all his 5 signature strengths. So that was like a moment of I would say for me it was a happy moment because it felt good convincing someone who has seen the whole 3 sheets highlighted is far, far more easier than someone who came with this thing saying, I don't think strengths works.
Yeah, there's.
So I don't think I've had a surprise.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I've not had a surprise really so far. Maybe in the future, but not so far.
Yeah, it's I'm always surprised. You know, I had my own children take it, and they came back saying, "Are they watching us? How do they know these things about me?" And to me, it's always amazing how it hits it most times for a lot of people. There's when we think about performance management and we think about, oftentimes when people come to StrengthsFinder, they may get a false sense of competency. And so when you were at Facebook, how do you separate or how do you see talent versus competency when we're thinking about performance?
Right. So I think what we have noticed and we observed in a lot of folks, especially if they're starting their career and if it's their first job, for instance, right, they have not experienced a lot of things to even identify what their talents are, to consciously work on them, invest in them to make them their strengths, right? So I think a manager plays a key role in giving them those opportunities. Sometimes they may just experience it, may not like it, drop it, and move on to something else. But as organizations, as managers, we need to give them room for failures. And when I say failures, it's important for them to be given that confidence to experiment and say, hey, you know what? I kind of had a vague idea that this is something that I love doing, but now that I've done it, I just hate it. I don't like it. I don't enjoy it. So there are those moments that you will have, and I think what performance conversation helps you do is really figure out saying, is this talent worth investing and making it a strength for each individual that you are actually having a conversation with. So while you're doing this, you're actually learning so much about your own self, because it's never one way, right? You're actually figuring out saying, how is this working for me when I'm having my performance conversation with my manager? Am I being open to those experiments and those failures? So I think that is how it has helped our performance conversations. And calibrations have never been easy, because it's not about let's talk about what this person has done well and move on. It's really about, let's focus on what this person has done well. Have they explored enough in other areas, possibly their hidden talents, and it can become their strengths? And what are the opportunities as an organization we are providing them? So calibrations used to run for almost a month and a half for us. It was never an easy conversation.
Yeah, I think some people approach this sometimes as an excuse to say, well, you and I both have woo, so we can talk about this together, and that, well, I can just let my woo run amok, and yet we still need performance metrics placed on those to say, what am I doing? How am I using it in the role? And how am I being effective with that, in the sense that I just can't go, so great, I get to be the life of the party and I get to go out and just talk to people. Well, no, that certainly has to come in with a purpose based on the role that I'm doing.
Absolutely.
Placed in a role here at Gallup right now where I get to do this. Well, this plays nicely, right, into my woo, into the woo factor. I'm also in recruiting, and so that also plays into woo. You're in those similar roles, right? I imagine even in your L&D roles, what kind of performance metrics did they hold you to, knowing that you had that positivity woo there? Were there some metrics you were held to for that?
Yeah, so we are measured on our stakeholder management and what kind of stakeholder management and what kind of feedback we receive from our various stakeholders. So if I can put them in different concentric circles, there are people who I'm extremely comfortable with, so have strong relationship, but what kind of impact do that stakeholder have to the work that I do, right? So all my 3 concentric circles, I'm actually given feedback on an ongoing basis in terms of what kind of stakeholder management, where does it stand in terms of the degrees of strength and the kind of impact that it is creating on both my work and the work that I do in terms of output for the business or for the stakeholders. So Woo for me is really about how strong is my stakeholder management and influencing skills.
Yeah, interesting. And my Woo really on this side is Woo communication together is tied to numbers. How, as we think about our webcasts, how many people are we drawing? How many people is it reaching? Am I having that influence in the communities? I watch our numbers very, very closely, both on the blog and on the webcast numbers, and so I can tie that to, tie it back to, am I having that influence? And so I think that's a great example of your Woo. I have positivity 6, so Woo positivity. You and I are very similar in that way, and yet in different roles and having performance management in different ways, being held accountable, right? In different ways. Pooja, I want to come back to you really quick. When we think about the performance management piece and we think about taking themes, investing in them, turning those into strengths, how do we? What kind of things do you see from the folks that come to our that come to the training, the ASC? What are they struggling with, and how do we talk about that? Oh no, I wanted Pooja to answer that. Sorry.
Oh sure. So go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, no, of course, I will pick your brain as well on that. But I think the one thing that often comes up that when you're talking to HR folks and people in organizations is the multiplicity of terms that we see being used, Jim. So you talk about skills, you talk about knowledge, you talk about competencies is what we spoke about. And then this entire thing of having those performance conversations, which are a lot of times taken as something that needs to be done once a year. We'll focus on targets and things like that. So when you start roping in the idea of strengths and developmental conversation into this, one is, of course, the fact that you are actually having a conversation, the meaningful conversations part, that how is it that you transcend those interactions beyond targets, beyond numbers, etc. That's point one. The second thing is, and this is, coming in terms of developmental goals, when you talk about competencies, for example, it's an outcome. It's an outcome. So, for example, in the example that you took, stakeholder management, that probably would have been an expectation of a multitude of roles or people doing those similar roles, that you need to manage stakeholders if you're in L&D or if you're in OD. Now, where the idea of strengths fits very beautifully and almost seamlessly for most people is if we can help them. And what Gallup, actually, we don't call it an individual development path, we call it an individualized development path, right? So which is to say that both you and I are both responsible for stakeholder management. You with your Woo might do it a little bit differently. I with my relator might do it a little bit differently. So helping people understand and be the best of what they can be is, again, when you talk about surprises or the aha moments, most of them come from the fact that, oh, somebody finally understands me and I can actually do more of what I am good at. So helping people get onto this individualized development path and not really getting into anything, drastic as change the whole system or align all jobs or change roles or give people the options to do whatever they want. So we don't talk in terms of such, drastic measures, because most often they're not even practical or possible. So we try and see how these things, the conversations and some of these can be seamlessly tied to the existing performance management system that an organization may be relying on.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Good.
Sindhu, do you want to add anything to that? I'm sorry I cut you. Sorry for cutting you off there. But
no, that's okay. That's okay. I'm sorry. I thought it was for me. So I think that was an interesting one because that reminded me of Shruti's question around change management, which I missed one part on. That is around how we deliberately got this entire team who actually volunteered to become change agents to actually go through the strengths program, and they became the strengths scouts. So what they did was they actually worked with teams to identify people's strengths and work with them in the change management process. So that was also an interesting way how they became the strength scouts, and they actually helped each of the team recognize what their strengths are and use their strengths in order to make them embrace the change. So I think that's the way the performance management works as well. I think if managers start looking at individuals as individuals and not as one size fits all, they will be able to look at areas of opportunities as how can I use your strengths in order to address some of those areas of opportunities. So that's the way performance can be looked at as well.
Pooja, we're out of questions from the chat room.
Great. I think I am done asking so many questions. I think we really picked her brain on everything that happens in Facebook and JDA.
Thank you.
No, thank you so much for all that information. It's so nice, when you talk about Facebook, especially where strengths is sort of at an evolved stage. Reminds me of Gallup, right? Because when we come to Gallup, somebody joins, the first thing they do is take the Strengths Finder, and the language of the strengths is all pervasive in whatever we do.
True,
so that's
true.
It's nice to hear about it for another organization as well. Yeah.
Thank you, and thanks to Gallup, because this entire team which went through the Gallup the Strengths Finder last week finished the session, and then they said that we're going to add our strengths to our signature, and then that way people will get curious to know what is it all about, and then that way we can advocate and talk about it and make this part of the organizational language as well.
Absolutely.
Sindhu, let me ask you one more question before we go.
Sure.
Do you think
Sure.
Facebook, more than any other organization I know, very, very Silicon Valley, right? And
Right.
has a very Silicon Valley driven culture. Did they bring that culture to India? And was it an influence there into the office? Do you feel like they brought a little bit of Silicon Valley there to the offices in India?
So Facebook has a very interesting culture, though it is very Silicon Valley driven. But Facebook as an organization has a culture which is completely their value driven culture, and the value is so well driven across the organization that it really doesn't matter which country or region you belong to. It is the same value that actually runs across the organization, and that's the beauty of the organization. And they've done a great job. If I were to ever give an example of living the values of an organization, I would probably give Facebook as an example.
Yeah, good. And Pooja, I think we would give Gallup as an example, right? I think our culture runs very, very deep and runs across whether you're in Germany or the UK or here in the United States or in Singapore or India or Australia.
Gallup cult, Jim.
I'm sure. And here you have a Gallup fan.
Yeah. Well, we thank you for coming on and for being a part of our program. So thanks for coming on today. You bet. Remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strengths Center. That's just GallupStrengthsCenter.com. Send us your questions or comments. You can send us to our email, coaching@gallup.com. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of this program as well, as we have a bunch of them, about 150 of them. Available, including all the links to our Facebook group, YouTube page, RSS feeds, iTunes feeds, iPhone, Android apps. We have all kinds. By the way, they're all free for you. They're all posted on our coaches blog. Just head out to coaching.gallup.com. Don't forget, if you're listening to us and you're thinking about coming and join us for the summit here, we're doing a worldwide summit in Omaha, July 18th, 19th, and 20th. If you're thinking of joining us, first you can get details on that. That's at courses.gallup.com. And we're doing a special webcast on May 4th, so you might want to join us for that. You can head over to our Eventbrite site, gallup.eventbrite.com. Get registered for that. We'll be talking about all the details around this summit. Again, that's a special one, May 4th, 2016. If you found this helpful, we'd ask that you'd share it, and we want to thank everyone for joining us today. We'll look forward to the next Call to Coach, and with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.